Inside Saluki Athletics, presented by Pagliai of Carbondale, the official coaches show of Saluki Athletics. Now, here is the voice of the Salukis, Luke Martin.
Welcome everybody back to Inside Saluki Athletics, presented by Pagliai of Carbondale. It's Arch Madness this week in St. Louis, Missouri. Salukis will begin it on Thursday against Indiana State, who they just saw on Sunday. And head coach Scott Nagy joins us here to talk about this week at Arch Madness, getting ready for the tournament. Coach, appreciate the time as always. I know no doubt a sour taste on Sunday, but well, your team's going to get another opportunity against the same team on Thursday to start off the conference tournament.
And everybody thinks they can win it, and everybody's saying the same thing. Somebody's going to do it, and 11 aren't. I believe we have a team that can do it. There's obviously some bad patterns on our team in terms of just all over the map, playing really well, playing really poorly. And the question is, can we put it together for 4 straight games, which has been a difficult thing for us to do.
Yeah, you guys have shown the ability at times this year to put a week together, which is 3 games in a row, which we've talked about this year in this league, Coach Nagy. It has just been, I don't want to say an odd year, but when 11 of the 12 teams at one point in time this year have gone a whole week winning every game in a week span, to 9 of the 12 has shown the ability to lose all 3 games in a week span. I mean, everybody probably feels like they can get hot at some point in time this week. Yeah,
I mean, they all do. And, I'm not interested in cliches and everybody's 0-0. We know all that. Just obviously very disappointing with what we did yesterday, and how do we move forward from that? How do we look back at it and say, what the heck were we doing? Because it really wasn't even our team that showed up. It was it's like every single guy had the worst day of the year type deal.
Yeah.
I think you give Indiana State some credit. They were ready, and they were ready to go. They treated senior day very seriously, and we obviously took it very lightly.
Yeah, and it's really built off of that, Coach Nagy, talking with Coach Watson after the game, and it's why I know you don't want that right before the conference tournament, but it's the first time your team has honestly looked at that since Bloomington Normal, the 31-point against Illinois State. There's been, now trying to put 40 minutes together has no doubt probably been the challenge at times. I mean, your group hasn't looked like that for a 40-minute time span in quite a while.
No, it was bad. It was bad, and like I say, it was from the very start, messing up plays, and we didn't have a hard time scoring early, but we couldn't get any stops. And it didn't matter who we brought off the bench. It was everyone that was involved in it. And, I think to that point you got to say even the coaching staff if that's the case.
Well, when you get to this time of year, you've had success in these conference tournaments, Coach Nagy, whether venues, et cetera, are different. It's always trying to find a way to have that sustained success in a tournament. What have you found when you get to this time of year that's most important? It's the most important trait for teams to have.
Probably rest and, a group of guys that will put away every single other thing besides what's going on here, and that will include, and I haven't been, obviously, to the Arch Madness in St. Louis, but we're talking about a different level, really, than I shouldn't say that. At South Dakota State in Sioux Falls, we had quite a few distractions, and how do we manage those, the families and everything else, and the distractions, and just because when you go on the road, it's really easy to do that because you just don't have to deal with all that other stuff. But going to St. Louis is going to be a different animal for us, and so can we limit those distractions while we're there?
Look, when you look at your team this year, there's been so many guys who have made a jump and have made an improvement throughout the season. Especially when you look at from last year to this year. Kennard Davis has just been an outstanding coach. I think he's no doubt going to be recognized by the league this week, and hope he's recognized in terms of the most improved team as well. You've been able to coach him. I know you didn't coach him last year, but maybe the initial film, or I don't know how much film you watched of Kennard last year to now, but where do you see his growth? What are you most proud about with Kennard in terms of the improvement he's made this year and the role he's filled for your team?
Well, he just is, he's allowed to do more this year, and Some of that just has to do with losing Elijah and trying to figure out who's going to be our point guard. He's not a natural point guard, but he's done a nice job with it. He's still scoring out of that position. He has his hands on the ball quite a bit, to start the offense. I would say he's not a natural point guard in terms of overly getting other people involved. That's where I would like to see him grow as a player. If he would stay at that position, and because I think he likes having his hands on the ball. Who doesn't? But you've got to be able to do a little better job of getting people involved. But he's never played that position, never been asked to do that. Probably in his entire career, he's kind of been one of the guys that's been a second, third tier guy that's asked to play defense, do the tough things, make an open shot, and now we're asking him to be a playmaker, maybe for the first time in a long time for him. And I think he enjoys. I mean, who doesn't enjoy scoring and getting the attention? And but he can definitely get better too, and he knows it.
Where have you seen him grow as a teammate, as a supporter, as a guy who can bring guys along?
I think that's probably the area he needs to grow in the most. And some of it, you're not going to change personalities; just aren't. He's a very quiet guy. Yeah. He most of his talking is done by how hard he plays and how tough he is. But he can become more consistent at that too. I think when a player goes from the role he was in, which is being a tough guy and a defender, to all of a sudden carrying a load offensively, some of those other things tend to drop off because you don't have the energy for them because you're carrying so much of the load offensively. And really, if we had better depth, I think he could be even more productive in less minutes because he could play harder. And but that's a lot of guys on our team. We're playing quite a few guys a lot of minutes, and we need to get deeper. We need to add talent that even more so that's coming off the bench, so we can play guys less minutes. And people worry about that. Well, less minutes means less points, less. It doesn't. You can be more productive in the minutes you're playing, and so. But that's where I would really like to see him grow, is with his voice and using it. It doesn't have to be all the time. I think people that are quiet, when they do use their voice, people listen.
When you get to this time of year, Coach Nagy, in my experience level, and that's why I want to ask you, I'm sure in your experience level too as a coach, you obviously have your main role guys, and they're going to have to be successful for you to have success in a conference tournament. But when you look at teams that have those magical type runs, who can go on and perform at a high level over a weekend, there is always someone that maybe wasn't counted on a ton in the regular season come through in a big way in these conference tournaments. Have you seen that a lot, where that's a commonality too, whether it's I look at your team this year, whether it's a Davion Sykes or someone who has shown the ability at times this year to be productive for you, that when it gets to a conference tournament, Jarrett Hensley, Kennard, and Ollie, those guys have performed and scored a lot of your points this year. But, man, when you have magical runs in a conference tournament, it can sometimes come from guys that maybe you least suspect at times.
When we have several guys that can do that, and I think people like Drew has grown more in his role, and but I think in particular off the bench, we need more from Rollins and Jorge and Davion in particular. Just like yesterday, when if those guys are sitting on the bench and they see the kind of start we get when we put you in the game, we need something from you. Now, we just didn't get it from anybody yesterday, and I think everybody could agree that it was a complete team collapse. And trying to figure out why, I think is futile at this point. I think you could really wreck yourself going why, and so what we have to be able to do is point out this is what we did, this is what we have to change. But yeah, we need, particularly in a 4-game stretch here, where it's going to be hard for those guys to play that many minutes that hard. We need everybody on the bench to really, really take their role more seriously.
I didn't really notice till I looked at the numbers, and again, numbers are numbers, and we've had this conversation throughout the year, Coach Nagy. It's not necessarily something you value a ton in terms of obviously the very end column in terms of points. You have that feel, how you impact the game, how you carry your teammates defensively in all those areas. But looking at what Drew Steffi has done this year, I mean, his numbers have been better than what Kennard did a year ago. Again, different team, different pieces to a group. But what have you tried to communicate to Drew throughout this year of, man, the improvement that he has made from the start to now? And again, how big of a piece he can be to this thing this week for your team.
Well, I think they all knew that, and Drew has the confidence to be able to do it. He's one of the guys that actually uses his voice on the team, even though he's a freshman. Has a high belief in himself, which, I mean, good players do. That's just the way it is. He's not always easy to coach, but most good players aren't, because they believe so much in themselves, and I've had a lot of guys that have been hard to coach that have been, and I'm not saying Drew's real hard to coach, but every once in a while, like he may feel like he's right and he'll snap back, and as a coach I can live with that because I know the confidence he has in himself. But we're going to need him to shoot the ball well. To be fully ready to go. A lot of teams go after him defensively because they know we switch. They try to get him on, their best guy, and he's going to have to do a great job guarding.
What have you noticed at times this year, Coach Nagy, that can help a guy like Justin Endsley, where, man, when he has a tough afternoon like he did on Sunday, where I know in the first half, no points, 2 fouls, was very limited in the first half. Because when he's going, he's a big part of what you guys are doing. I'm not even just saying when he's scoring the basketball. It's when he is effectively impacting the game. Man, it helps everybody on this team. Jarrett's one of those guys. What do you see as the difference of, man, a day like Sunday for him, which he wasn't the only one for sure, but the difference between the impacts of within a week, because on Tuesday against Illinois State, he was so masterful on senior night.
Yeah, and that's where I say trying to figure out why and asking yourself that question becomes futile. It really does. And I think the only guy at this point that can help Jarrett is Jarrett. Yeah. In terms of what he's telling himself, what he believes about his capabilities, his level of confidence. He may be one of those guys, I think, that struggles with that, where Drew doesn't.
Chevy's Stadium this spring salute.
Little things. Those little details are really what adds up and helps set us apart, and we don't.
Well,
this has been another episode.
Too is Ali Deba, and I think he will no doubt get some love from the league this week and those who vote on all the postseason awards. But one of the areas that I know you have been coaching him hard all the way in the summer has been defensively for him. You have seen a high ceiling for him on the defensive side. Don't want to ask you anything in terms of if he's reached that ceiling yet or the potential there, but where have you seen Ollie throughout this year become much better on that side of the basketball, Coach Nagy?
Well, there are times, and all these questions are hard for me, Luke, because you're asking me all these things right after coming off that game,
I know.
And nobody did any of that stuff yesterday. But Ollie, there are times where he is like I'm completely blown away at. You can't screen him. You can't. I mean, he can. And there are other times where he's disinterested, and again, so the consistency of that. Very few guys are willing to grow on the defensive end like that needs to be done, and keep trying to convince a lot of these guys that if they want to even play professionally, that needs to be an area where they can make a difference, because most guys that want to play professionally think they just have got to be able to score. But there are guys needed at the professional level that are tremendous defenders. I've seen several guys in the NBA that struggle to score but make it because they're tough and they can guard, and they embrace that role. And there are always specialties at the professional level, and all these guys need to grow at that, because if they're not going to be counted on the professional level to score as much as they were in college, they're still going to be asked to guard, and it's an area that they can get themselves on the floor and get paid.
What do you believe, Coach Nagy, knowing that that's an area, as you see, you've seen so many pros in your time. The reason they become a pro is they hung their hat on the defensive side. It's still hard for guys at times maybe to buy into that. Any reason through your years of why, other than just the toughness it takes defensively to really have to do it as being the difference, and it's maybe not as sexy as scoring points and the highlights offensively? Like, what would you kind of pinpoint as the reason for that?
Probably just the effort that it takes, because it does take away. If you want a guy to rest, you want him to rest on offense, not on defense, because we can still score. even if you're not turned up. But one guy breaks down defensively, the whole team breaks down defensively. And offense is not that way. It just isn't. But, you know, and everybody gets their pats on the back from the offensive end, not the defensive. And everybody gets NIL for the most part based on that. And so all the rewards, almost all the rewards, whatever they might be, come from putting the ball in the basket. Yet, you know, from a coach's standpoint, we know how important it is to have guys like Mayo. You know, most valuable, I don't know. Most important, yes, he is.
Coach, I'll get you out of here on this, and I know a lot of those questions, as I said, when you look at the encompass of the season, can be difficult to answer. This one won't be, in terms of what needs to change, what needs to be the biggest improvement for your group from what was on Sunday to Thursday to make it a much better effort and execution level against Indiana State and St. Louis to start off the tournament.
I mean, it's just effort. It really is. You know, we can go back and watch that, and our effort was just not good. And you know, the players haven't had a chance to watch it yet. We'll get to watch that tomorrow morning. You know, it's going to be a hard film session. It was to me a bit embarrassing, and you know, hopefully it will be to the guys, because it doesn't matter how embarrassing it is to me. How does it impact the players? They're the ones that play. I understand it's my job to get them ready, and but we, you know, I talked about this yesterday. We have to have their hearts, and if they're embarrassed by that, then we have their hearts, and if they're not, it isn't going to matter.
Coach, we appreciate the time. Looking forward to making this trip to St. Louis with you guys this week, and we'll get ready for the Sycamores on Thursday. Appreciate the time, Coach Nagy.
Okay, thanks.
Once again, that was head coach Scott Nagy. We'll take a timeout. When we come back, we'll be joined by Kennard Davis Jr. here on Inside Saluki Athletics, presented by Pagliai of Carbondale. It has been a tremendous year for this guy. So much improvement from his freshman year, coming in as a babyface. Still a babyface. Kennard here in his sophomore year, he has been outstanding. I know he's going to be honored by the league this week with multiple awards coming his way. Kennard's here to join us. Kennard, when you think of this week, being able to go back home, St. Louis, Arch Madness, is it kind of hard to believe that, oh my goodness, here we are. It's conference tournament time now.
Yeah, this time came back around fast, you know. Well, it's been a good season, you know, ups and downs, you know. We got better as a group, you know. Now it's time to go to St. Louis, string together a couple wins in the home city.
We have talked about the improvement of the team. Let's just talk with the team. I know Sunday was a very sour taste in how it ended, but man, Kennard, it was a different look from early January to really end of January and most of the month of February. So much has been defensively for you guys. How much do you credit how much better you guys got defensively as a reason why this thing is really flipped?
Oh, yeah. We took pride on the defensive end, you know, and I feel like that's how we got together a couple wins, you know, earlier on in the season. I feel like we were focusing on offense, but defense wins games at the end of the day. So, yeah, we just got to keep doing what we do.
Coming in, when I got here a year ago, so many were like, Luke, telling you, Kennard Davis is going to be a tremendous defensive player. This year, you've kept that level, Kennard, but man, your offense has just totally boomed. Some of that can be different role that you've had to fill, but what did you expect, Kennard, when you head into this year? Like, what was your expectation for yourself and what you saw of what could be the potential you could do this year and help this team out from an offensive standpoint?
You know, after talking to Coach Nagy, you know, just hearing what he had to offer, you know, I feel like this was the best spot for me, you know. him trusting me and believing me, just me being a leader, to help the team win, So me playing defense, that's what I do anyways, and then adding a little bit more to my game on the offensive end. So, yeah.
Offensively, was there specific players that you would watch that would help you from a film standpoint to try to add things to your game? Like, what were areas that outside of just getting shots up, Kennard, where did you try to really lean into your basketball IQ to say, this can help me this year, and things you did over the offseason and throughout the year?
I won't really say I watch other players, but I watch a lot of film on myself after practice, and also this summer I worked out in Houston, Texas, with a trainer, so got some good work in. And my dad's always giving me advice and tips, so it's very helpful.
And not so much necessarily players at this level, but are there any NBA guys or even professionally when you watch maybe offensive systems, offensive schemes, you look at ways where you can help yourself even here at the college level? Or is there any of that you tried to dive into at all or help your game at all?
Oh, yeah, a little bit. I watch a little bit of Jason Tatum,
Yeah.
home city. But, yeah, like Drew Holiday, I feel like that's kind of my comparison. A couple guys say that, but, yeah.
Yeah. Well, what about their games do you believe in? Look, everyone would love to emulate those guys because you said you get to the highest level, and, of course, St. Louis ties for most of them. But what's been something you gravitated towards where you're like maybe something little that you've been able to add to your game this year?
I would say just like reading the floor, seeing the floor ahead of time, like seeing if it's a gap ahead of time. Just seeing the floor, seeing which teammate is open. That's really what I would say.
We talked about on the air on Sunday, your first ever career start was in Holman Center against Indiana State last year. Kennard, when you think of how you felt that night of your first start to now, I mean, what comes to mind? I mean, in terms of just your growth from your first start a year ago in that building in November to now, of course, finishing up your sophomore regular season just the other day.
Oh, yeah, that was a big difference, I was a freshman. I was very nervous. But now I feel like I didn't got comfortable, got a few games under my belt as a starter, just getting used to it, just flowing with the game.
I can go through all the numbers. I've put them out on social media of the improvement you've made. I think, look, it would be a crime if you're not on the most improved team this year, and I think it would be a crime if you're not recognized by any of the all-conference teams. I know that's a selfish look, Kennard, but do you feel like the improvement you have made personally has matched the production? Like, do you personally feel like, yeah, I've made that big of a jump, or is it just you're kind of locked in your season and you're just kind of going with how you're performing, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I'm really just locked into the season, just going. I really haven't looked at the numbers like that and looked at other players' numbers to compare myself, but I do feel like I worked very hard, put in a lot of time and effort, so it could be up for grabs, yeah.
Well, we'll find out as those awards start to come out this week. But, again, I don't want to – Sunday was no doubt a difficult day. But, as I've said, you guys have shown more times than not, especially over this last month and a half, Kennard, that the version we saw on Sunday is not the version that you guys have been. And the practices, hey, and in the Sunday were really good. I mean, Saturday's practice, when Coach called it early, I thought it was deservingly so because the energy level, the pace, everything was really good. What did you feel just was kind of just the odd that it just didn't match up? Like the energy level from the last couple days did not add up on Sunday. Like, was there just anything that you could put your finger on why that was the case?
Not really, but it just all comes down to being disciplined. I feel like the most disciplined team in the tournament is going to win. So just communication, just being on point.
When you get to the tournament and this week, we were able to catch up with Paul Lusk, who's assistant at Purdue, played here, of course, in the 90s, was part of the three-peat in the 90s. You look at those championship runs for Southern, Kennard, a lot of the toughest games were the very first one. Everyone wants to look at the run of the tournament. Man, we want to make it a long stay. But how important is the focus? Obviously, just we got to focus on the first game.
Exactly. Yeah, we just got to take it one game at a time. Obviously, we got Indiana State coming up again for our first game, so we just got to lock back in, yeah.
What are the biggest things, Kennard, that you feel you guys as a group, when you get beat the way you did, it's clear where you need to improve. What are the biggest improvements that you guys have to make between now and Thursday when you see Indiana State again?
First, we have to watch film, just see the game plan and just trusting coaches, just being disciplined, as I say, and then lock in on defense.
How much pride is it going to be for you to suit up on Thursday to be the first game of Arch Madness in your hometown of St. Louis. Yeah, I know you don't always look at it from a personal perspective, Kennard, but how much pride will it take that, hey, you get to represent the city, man. You get to represent and play in your hometown this weekend.
Not for real. It's a blessing, you know. I have a lot of family coming out, so just to be able to win in front of the fam, that'll be good for the team and me. So, yeah.
What's this year meant to you, Kennard?
It's meant a lot, you know, a lot of growth, you know, knowing that we started from a whole new organization, you know, new teammates, new coaching staff, and we came a long way, you know, started off a little rough, and then we had some ups, so it's been a journey for sure.
You are no doubt a guy that this team looks to and will follow because of what you do on the floor, but how important is really the team aspect, Kennard, of, I mean, we know when Jarrett Hensley plays at a high level, you guys can really go. Obviously, Ollie, the same way. No, Davion had a good game on Sunday. He is someone that you guys have faith in. Drew Steffi, the improvement he has made this year within his freshman year. Just what's the capability of this team as you head into this week?
Oh, yeah. We know we got a lot of weapons. That's what I would say. But, you know, it's just a thing. We got to just keep boosting confidence in them guys, you know, Jared, getting him open shots, you know, getting him good looks, you know, because once he gets going, he's going, you know. Ali Deba is the same way. So if we all play together as a team, I feel like we're unstoppable.
What do you see your role in that to get guys going? Outside of just, you know, sharing the basketball, being a good teammate, how have you seen yourself grow this year, Kennard, of giving a teammate confidence?
Well, yeah, I feel like my energy is contagious. So they see me getting on the ground, screaming, getting offensive rebounds. They like that, you know. That's what we do. So once they see that, now they're getting going, you know, and there we go. The dog's rolling.
I don't think our fans, and even at times for me, I've really been able to put in perspective and look, points and stats are stats. You could put some stock into it, whatever you want. But when you take Drew Steffi, for example, his numbers this year have almost been a little bit better or an uptick than what your numbers were as a freshman. Initially, I probably would have been like, man, I thought Kennard, you as a freshman, had a much bigger impact a year ago. But what have you tried to do to help Drew to be like, man, like, you're having a good year. Like, you're a freshman, it's your first year. How have you encouraged him to help him learn in his freshman year where you obviously were a year ago playing a big role?
Oh, yeah, you know, just telling him keep going, keep working, you know, just boosting him with confidence like he's a shooter. So we tell him, like, really no shot is a bad shot for you, you know. Just take it like you're going to make it.
Of course, Arch Madness this week in St. Louis. I have heard, Kennard, that your statue is bigger than Damian Mayo's in the city. Is there any truth to that at all?
Nah.
Not sure. I heard that you were going to take guys by and show that, look, like my statue of Vashawn is much bigger than Damian Mayo's, whatever's been built.
Have a couple banners up, but yeah.
Hey, banners are good too. Yeah. Banners are good too. Kennard, appreciate the time, man. Wish you the best this week and excited to watch you play in your hometown in St. Louis for Arch Madness.
Oh, yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Once again, that was Kennard Davis. We'll take a break here on the show. We got much more coming here on Inside Saluki Athletics, presented by Pagliai of Carbondale. Everybody's been asking for this guy to come on Inside Saluki Athletics this year, presented by Pagliai of Carbondale. We haven't had him on since the summer. Let's just say there's a lot that has happened between now and then as we get ready for the conference tournament, which means this is an easy week for this guy. There's nothing going on. Justin Endsley, the Director of Operations for Saluki men's basketball. It's not like you got all the free time in the week.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, right. No, this is one of the craziest weeks of the year, but also a really fun week. So.
Yeah, no doubt we'll get into those challenges in a moment. But, all right, Justin, you're back, Director of Operations. Has things been outside of snowstorms and Bloomington Normal back home? I guess it's probably been the only trip that's been a little bit wacky at times this year.
Yeah, no, obviously I've had a couple longer trips this year. Obviously our Florida trip
Yeah.
was a week-long trip, and then we spent the UIC Valpo swing trip back at the end of January. But no, pretty good year travel-wise from my perspective. Nothing too crazy besides getting stuck at Illinois State back there at the beginning of January.
Well, and you sending R-Dub and I through DFW and, getting back late from South
Yeah,
Dakota. But,
yeah,
but we won't put all of that on you.
Yeah.
Just all of it.
Yeah. Exactly. Yep, that's fine. I'm used to it from you, so.
That is the norm as we go throughout the year on the road. Well, of course, the challenges with the conference tournament, all the scheduling. Here we are on Tuesday, kind of looking at it all in this week. Describe, or really not even describe, just tell, when does kind of the planning process start? Now, granted, seating, all of that stuff really impacts when you're going to go through all of it, but take us through when you kind of really start kind of playing the week and all that goes into this week for the tournament.
Yeah, so it actually kind of starts the summer before. So June of 2024, we get everything from the Valley, recapping like where the team's going to be staying, hotel contacts, all that type of stuff. So that's a very beginning part, and then not much throughout the fall, but once you kind of hit November, December, the Valley starts sending you a lot of things. Regarding your hotel and everything like that, and then you really start beginning of January after the new year, reaching out to your hotel contact, scheduling your rooms, meals, all that type of stuff. And then as you get closer to the end of the season, then you finalize your meals, buses, all that type of stuff.
How does it help that this is going to be, what number is this for you, Arch Madness, in terms of working professionally? Is this going to be your fifth Arch Madness? Fifth or sixth? Sixth Arch Madness? I mean,
yep, year 2 full-time, 4 as a manager.
I mean, how does that at least help in terms of knowing how to navigate the waters and knowing where to look, whether it's places to eat, food to order from, the hotel setup? Like,
yeah, no,
how much does the experience level help you this week?
Oh, super helpful. Like, it's a breeze now, just crossing T's, dotting I's at this point, making sure you're on track with deadlines. But know what to expect. Obviously, when you play at Enterprise Center, there's a lot more security, that type of stuff that you have to follow based on just going to another Valley school for a regular season competition game. But no, it's kind of routine clockwork now, just meeting your deadlines, staying organized and on top of things.
Before we kind of get back to the conference tournament and the setup and all that stuff, last home game of the year, able to honor someone who I know has been a big part of Saluki basketball and the history, and I'm, of course, referring to John Mark. John, of course, is a guy that you have been able to build a really good rapport with on the road. Describe his personality and what it means to be around John Mark and the experience that is John Mark.
Yeah, no, John Mark is awesome. For those that don't know, John Mark's been our bus driver this season and all 6 seasons that I've been here, and he's been driving Saluki athletics teams for 25 years now. And it was something I kind of thought of at the beginning of this year. What's a way that we can recognize John Mark for not only from a men's basketball perspective, but just as Saluki athletics in general. And I thought honoring him at one of our games, giving him a signed basketball from all the coaches that he's driven would be a really cool thing. And I think he really enjoyed that.
I think John Mark would enjoy it if I said it this way. If we had him on the show, I probably need to find a mute button every now and then.
Oh, absolutely. That guy can talk and sometimes not use the right words, but no, John Mark's awesome. Super funny, just super relatable, and you always know that he's going to get you there safely. So he bonds really well with our guys, our staff, everything like that, and that's what makes it cool, because a lot of schools you don't get the same bus driver every trip. And for us, knowing that we have him 99% of the time, unless he has a previous commitment or something like that, it's really cool, and get to know him and build that relationship.
And to get you guys home safe through, we talked about the snowstorm and Bloomington Normal, obviously not easy driving conditions coming home. I know this year Bradley was a little bit of a snow trip, too, coming back. So, I mean, to get you guys home safe and sound through all the weather.
Yeah, with that Bradley trip, too, we almost got their loading dock down to their gym is pretty steep, and we almost got stuck coming up that. They didn't have that salted, and the wheels were turning. And, I mean, he's a professional at it. He knows how to get out of snow, ice, whatever it is. He's a professional.
As you said, your 6th year going to Arch Madness. What's your favorite part about it? I know with your background as well, you and your dad have spent years going to Arch Madnesses too. So it's been the Endsley family for a while, but what's your favorite memory of the tournament? What you enjoy about St. Louis?
Well, my favorite memory growing up, I forget what year it was, but it was a semifinal match obviously growing up being from Bloomington Normal, I was a little bit of an Illinois State fan.
Don't say that too loud.
But got to watch ISU and SIU in a Saturday game, and that was a really cool memory growing up. And now being at SIU, that makes it even more special. But, you know, Arch Madness is a great time. I always think of it as it's kind of a new season for all these teams. Obviously, what happened during regular season does impact it, but the way to look at it now is everyone's 0-0. Anything can happen in 4 days. You have your team playing that has been together since the summer, has played since November together, and really anything can happen at this point, and that's how you have to look at it. But I think for us, obviously, we're the closest school to St. Louis. It's so cool to see our fans out there. And it's just a different environment, something that we don't get to experience just going to other Valley schools. The environment there is tremendous.
Coach Nagy on the show really described how his job is trying to limit as many distractions as possible. For you, how do you see your role in limiting distractions in terms of things that Coach Nagy, the staff, and everybody else does not have to worry about?
Yeah, so that's kind of the hard part and the balancing factor that I have to find throughout the last couple weeks of the season. Obviously, there's some stuff I need his input on looking towards a tournament, but then you also have to realize that we've got games pretty much every Wednesday, Saturday, Wednesday, and obviously his main focus is on those games, but there's times I do have to step in and like say, hey, I need to look forward to St. Louis, get your input on stuff, because obviously there's deadlines I have to meet. So just kind of finding that balancing point, and me knowing him for about a year now, realizing what he would be comfortable with and kind of making that call on my own.
The other area, too, and you get there early, you guys are going up here later on this afternoon or this evening. You'll practice here. You'll get practice time in the arena, but, of course, there's so many teams that have to get into it outside of Enterprise Center. There's also, you got to build partnerships. You got to try to find relationships where you can go find a way to practice as well outside of that time.
Yeah. So I had a Zoom yesterday with the Valley, the pre-tournament Zoom that everyone's required to be on from all the different Valley schools. Get assigned your practice times. Number 1 seed gets to pick what time they want first, and then it works your way down. So we got our practice time, 40 minutes Enterprise, and then obviously the day before game, we've got another gym to go to, and that's just knowing people in the St. Louis area, other coaches, to reach out, and a lot of them are more than willing to help you out and let you use one of their gyms for a couple hours.
In terms of the preparation piece, of course, play Thursday at noon. How much of this week, Justin, just in terms of what you have planned, you plan all the way through Sunday, so in terms of the importance of having everything figured out, you kind of know where everyone's going once kind of the week starts to take fruition and takes on its own.
Yeah, so it's obviously hard from my perspective up until knowing what seed we are to plan the timing of everything, but yesterday was a big day of getting the itinerary built, figuring out what time everything would be at, obviously playing at noon. Things will be early. Have to get the guys up, get them a good breakfast, pregame meal, that type of stuff, watch a little bit of film. And then, assuming you win, which we will, we'll get back, have post-game meal, let them rest for a little bit, then we'll have to start on prep for the next team, and then kind of just a repeat day thereafter and make it till Sunday.
Well, look, I know every time I bring you on, it's your basketball knowledge that keeps everybody here. I mean, everyone wants to know, man, how have things turned? I was like, well, they started listening to Justin Endsley more. I mean, that's the thing that's really turned this season, no doubt, in terms of a positive. Why have you enjoyed to see this group improve, Justin? I know everyone's kind of mind is still on the most recent game, which was disappointing against Indiana State, but this group has come a long way, not just in terms since November, but they've come a long way even since early January.
Yeah, no, obviously they're in that early January, right after that Belmont game, we had 0-5 staring us down, and as a staff, we had to figure out how do we get these guys to believe again. And that's when we kind of took it under our belt to really pull this group together. And then I believe we went on a four-game, 4-1 win streak there right after that. And it's just been really cool to see this group of guys day by day figure things out, believe in themselves. Obviously, we've had some results that we haven't been happy with, but I think this group has done a really good job of pulling themselves together for some of the cards that have been dealt to them. And obviously now, here on March the 4th, we just have to look at it as a new season, and we're ready to get after it.
I'll tell you, though, I'm a little disappointed in you. because I kind of gave you a little bit of a heads up of what I could potentially be wearing this week for Arch Madness, and you kind of really crapped on it. You didn't think it was going to be a good idea. So, like, why on earth would you not think it would be a good idea for Luke Martin to rock the Moo Davis headband?
Hey,
I mean, I think it would look really good.
I think you should. I think you should.
All right. Well, you were kind of crapping on it a little bit before we got started, and I told Kennard there could be some potential of this, and he lit up like a Christmas tree. So, a little disappointed that Justin
if Kennard wants it, let's do it.
All right.
Do it. Maybe we'll get the staff to wear them too.
Now that would be something if all the staff. I know for sure Justin Endsley will come out wearing his Moo Davis headband, and we'll see if we can. Hey, whatever we can get to get some good mojo, man.
Yep. No, let's have a fun week and make a little bit of a run here.
Absolutely, Justin. Appreciate all you do, my friend. You are a huge part of this Saluki basketball program. I know everybody in Saluki Nation knows that, and this team knows that. Appreciate the time coming on and giving us a little bit of insight to what Arch Madness is like for the Director of Ops.
Thanks, Luke. Appreciate it.
Once again, that was Justin Endsley. We're going to take a time out here on the show. When we come back, it's Larry Larson catching up with Kelly Bond White in Saluki women's basketball. This is Inside Saluki Athletics, presented by Pagliai of Carbondale.
We're back on Inside Saluki Athletics, presented by Pagliai of Carbondale, talking women's basketball with head coach Kelly Bond White. And coach, I know digging for positives can sometimes be a little bit of a challenge, after an 0-2 weekend. But, the start on Saturday at Murray State was just palpably different. Mm-hmm. How encouraging is it when, I know it's a small segment, but when your team really puts it all together for a stretch like that against one of the league's best?
Yeah, that's one of the things, Larry. It has been. It's been a long year, and it's hard when you don't get the results that you want from the work that you're putting in. The resilient part with this group is we've been finding our own goals. We've been finding our own goals and things and challenges that we can pull out. And so what we talked about, again, was energy. Again, was how we started. But with this young group, I think one of the things is, hey, you go down one possession, you get a stop. Okay. All right, then we scored on the first possession. Then we get another stop, which we call a kill. A stop, score, stop is a kill for us. So you start off the game with a kill. Then their energy gets a little bit different. Like, okay, we got, and they need those positives to feed off. We're going to get to a point where we can remain neutral, and it doesn't, the outcome of a possession doesn't dictate, our entire makeup. We can be NBA players, that next best action, type players. But right now, it's those little things that we're trying to find in pockets. So we were playing literally in 30-second hey, guys, 30 seconds, dig in, 30 seconds. And you got the whole bench, screaming at the whole game and engage. But to get that start, I thought it carried out throughout the game when you see some numbers that, are a little bit higher than they normally are. Again, it's skewed a little bit because Murray wants to be on that offensive side of the floor. But those are the positives and the momentum that you try to take from a game like that and build into coming home.
And obviously a really balanced effort. I think there's something to be said for that. Obviously, a lot more possessions in a game like that. But when you have an effort when so many different players have 6, 8, 9 points, what does that mean to a team where that's not always the case?
You're trying to build it. We're trying to build it that way where you have to prepare for so many different things. And that's what makes Murray, that's what makes them who they are. You got to start with the head of the snake, which is Caitlin Young. So you start with her, but you know what? Now Haven Ford's getting downhill, and who didn't play against us last? Number 1, Pop comes in, tremendous score, but you know what? Hey, Learn can still knock that down, and so that's what we're creating, and that's something that I've always given Coach credit for. We talked a little bit about it, about her complete reconstruction since we beat them at their place in that time. She kind of tore down her program a little bit and built it still around Caitlin, but she made some drastic changes that coaches have to do. And I talked to her about that after the game, and just saying, hey, just not being afraid to change. And that's something we're looking at in this postseason as well, as we head into postseason.
Kind of looking smaller picture, obviously one of the biggest positives from that game at Murray State was Gift breaking the single-season rebound record. And anytime you do that in a program that's as storied as SIU's, it's really meaningful. In talking to Gift, what do you think that record means to her?
One of the things that we talked about, not just to her, but in recruiting her, showing her film of Renaya Randall, who's also, one of the ones that she surpassed in that category. That's how recruiting works. When you see that, oh, we're going to give you the spacing, oh, we're going to give you that, to be able to utilize, your abilities and her talent, for that. I just think it's a reward. She'll be rewarded and recognized in our conference in terms of, I don't know which one she'll get, but she's going to get some type of all-conference recognition just for the effort that she put in with that. So when you do have somebody like that is talented enough to go track that ball down, hats off to her. And I told her, I just said, hey, I don't care if it's your own rebound or one of your teammates' rebounds. It's still hard to do with the amount of people hanging on you most of the time. So I wanted to give her credit for that, and she deserves it.
Especially considering, like you said, the amount of attention that she garners. It's just insane. The triple teams that we've seen even throughout the year, it's just hard for her to deal with, I imagine. Sure. Looking at senior weekend, a player we're going to talk to later on in the show is Tierney Brown, being honored on Saturday with Illinois State coming to town. What has she meant to the program this year? I know we've talked about her leadership, but also her scoring lately. She's helped out in a lot of different ways and had to do a lot of different things. So, come Saturday afternoon, what's going to be going through your head when you're thinking back about Tierney's accomplishments?
Well, you know what? When you start with this season, and we've talked about this in earlier shows, that T had a big decision to make at the end of last season. And choosing to come back and lead the squad, her teammates elected her captain just because they understood you have to have that mouthpiece. And Tierney's been very vocal for us off the court, on the sideline, but most importantly when she's out there, trying best to help her teammates. She's one of my best catch-and-shoot players, and she can get downhill. She understands how to use her body and angles. And she's come on at a time where, we're banged up. But I joke with her all the time, just as the grandma on the team, this is the most minutes she's ever played in her career. I mean, she almost logged another 30, at Murray, but she's taking it on. And she communicates with me, and her teammates respect her. Her teammates respect her because with the amount of young people that we have, what we've always talked about this season is not letting the weight of it get in you and sag you down. And Tierney's been tremendous just in terms of getting them, keep your head up. Hey, next shot, the next one's going to fall. Hey, get back. And it's always contagious because if T has a bad day, hopefully somebody's looking to lift her, as well. But I think that's what her legacy is that she never was just a women's basketball player. She's somebody that's invested in her time here, and not just on the athletic side, but she's known throughout the university. And I think that's the true sign of what being a Saluki is. And from the athletic standpoint, she brings people to our games. She's out there. Our community members know her, and she's just embraced it. And we talked about it. Somebody said something in the locker room about from the beginning to the end. And you just don't know until those numbers start ticking down on your last games when you've done this for a huge portion of your life. You start thinking about, the end is near. And there's some excitement to it because, hey, other chapters, but it's still one of those things that, man, I've done this for a long time. And you can see that it's playing out like this was my journey. Okay, now what's next? But I've enjoyed watching T with this group because we've desperately needed some internal leadership in that locker room, and she's one of the ones that stepped up and has tried to do that.
So you mentioned the end, 2 regular season games left here this weekend. We've got Bradley on Thursday, Illinois State on Saturday. Mm-hmm. Bradley is a game that I'm sure, harkening back to that trip to Peoria, brings a little frustration, especially considering how well that we played against Illinois State in their house.
Yeah.
Coming into this weekend, what are some of the big focuses in those two matchups?
One of the things we told them is, hey, we got more than 1 day prep because we did play well at Illinois State. But with 1 day prep and their improvement of what they've done with their program as well, we get some time to make some corrections off that game. And what we talked about leaving Murray was being able to leave with some momentum. We shot 44% for the game, which is an improvement there. We shot about 30% from the three, which I'd still like to get that up 5 or 6%. We shot 80% from the free throw line. We out-rebounded them by 4. Those pesky turnovers came back with 17 that they got some points on. But it's still something where you look at the numbers and say, okay, if you could do this against a Murray, this is what you have to bring at the same token against a Bradley and into this weekend. And so I think we accomplished what we wanted for a couple quarters there against Belmont, and then for situations against Murray as well. The silver lining of that, of course you want to win the game, but the silver lining is the adjustments that you made and the momentum that you're bringing into the weekend.
No doubt about that. Coach, we got Bradley at 6 p.m. on Thursday, Illinois State, 2 p.m. on Saturday. Appreciate your time as always.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
We've got more Inside Saluki Athletics presented by Pagliai of Carbondale coming up next. We're back on Inside Saluki Athletics presented by Pagliai of Carbondale, now joined by senior guard Tierney Brown ahead of senior weekend in Carbondale. Senior Day coming up on Saturday with Illinois State coming to town. And Tierney, before we dive into Senior Day and all that brings, looking back to last game at Murray State, I know another loss, but we talked about it with Coach Bond White and the momentum and the hope that a stretch like the first quarter brought to this team, competing with one of the better teams in the conference. From a player's perspective, how important was it that some of the work in practice, translated to a game and a stretch like that?
Yes, I genuinely think that we've honestly been able to compete almost with every single team in the conference, if that be the first quarter or the first half. It's just kind of being able to, put those pieces together that we are still working on and still growing with. But it's definitely a confidence booster for the team just to feel like, yes, we can compete and we can stick around with other teams. We're doing a lot of the right things. We're doing a lot of good things. And I think that there is a level of understanding that's been able to come now from the 5-6 months period of us just playing basketball that a lot of the younger ones are starting to have clicked in their brains. And so we're just kind of hoping to build off that and build into a senior weekend and then next weekend for the tournament.
Your individual performance has taken a big step forward in terms of scoring. What's clicked for you lately that has allowed you to fill it up a little bit more?
Yeah, it's funny because you want to just think like I'm working harder. I'm honestly doing a lot of the same things that I've been doing, and I think that kind of like Coach Bond saying, like you really start to realize like the clock is ticking down, and I think that's been one thing for me. Definitely, like I'm almost done, so I might as well just try to go out with a bang, try to go out giving it all that I can. And I also, it's like one of the games is just like clicked into my brain where everything just seems like a lot clearer now in my head. And I was texting my parents the other day. I'm like, why couldn't this have been game? But it's like I drive to the basket and I see way more options now than I did even a month or two ago. And so, of course, that could be partially because of the end being near, or it's kind of just how the way that basketball goes. Aside from watching a lot of the games that are on right now, I know we're preparing for March Madness. Everyone's really excited for that kind of thing. So just being able to kind of hone in on the tasks at hand and trying to be able to use my energy and my voice and be able to lead my team in order to, like, in retrospect, I get a lot of energy fueled back into me. So I think that's been helping me a lot, just being able to be an energizer bunny, being able to talk. And then when I'm talking them through a lot of this stuff, I'm talking myself through it as well.
They say the game slows down. So that would make sense as a senior. Kind of looking back on your career as a whole, you've seen a lot, you've played through a lot, you've been on a lot of very different groups here at SIU, that's for sure. When you look back on it, the experience as a whole, what are some of your favorite memories that you'll take with you?
Yes. It's kind of crazy. I was thinking about that on the bus ride home, just kind of like picturing and thinking about all of the fun memories that I have had, and all the things that I've been able to experience. Definitely getting that in the locker room at Valpo, where we were told that we actually ended up winning, because we lost that game at Valpo my freshman year, and everyone's like crying in the locker room. I'm literally throwing up in the bathroom, like I was sick to my stomach, and then Coach Stein walks in and she's like, well, it's a good thing that Mo State lost too. And I was like, we literally just, everything clicked, and we were like screaming, yelling. Everyone was jumping up and down. So, of course, that's definitely one of my favorites, because we were so miserable. We would have still been number one, but we would have been tied for first. And so with that loss from Mo State, we ended up coming up on top. So we were ecstatic about that. And then I guess for some of my recent years, dodgeball. We literally played dodgeball this year at the end of one of our practices, and that was so fun for me. Just kind of any time, honestly, away from basketball that we get to experience and be able to actually get to know each other. My teammates know the times that we've been able to kick it at my house or kick it at their house. I've loved and I cherish all of those times very dearly. The electricity that I'm able to receive from my teammates on and ones and threes, those are also a lot of memories that I definitely cherish, a lot of memories that I've been able to take with me throughout these 4 years, for sure.
You know, kind of looking ahead, so often people in sports and specifically college athletes talk about how much their sport, basketball, can translate into real life and what's next. So what's next for Tierney Brown, and what are you going to take away from playing 4 years of NCAA Division I basketball into that?
Yes, I've been applying for a lot of internships for the summer, and then I'm looking for GA positions. A lot of them are kind of around NBC, so I might still be seeing a lot of you guys for the next few years, but I'm on routes for planning for grad school right now. So, and I think some of my biggest takeaways, of course, the normal time management, just the effort that you have to put into things, you'll get out. And I think that's the biggest thing that I've realized from playing a sport for 4 years. The effort that you put in is what you're going to get out of it. And also just being able to maintain a steady mind, because although you might not be performing statistically or in the workplace, you might not be hitting the numbers you're supposed to be hitting, but at some point you can always do something else that's definitely going to be helping your team in some way, if that makes sense. And I think that I've had to take that role on many times. Last year I had the high ankle sprain, and I wasn't able to help on the court anymore. I had to be vocal. I had to be someone that was able to speak to my teammates, know the plays, be able to tell people where to go, and that was a different role for me. And I had to, even though I couldn't perform at a level of being on the court, I had to perform in other ways to continue to make sure that my teammate or my team was able to succeed. So just kind of those takeaways. And I think also just making sure that I'm well informed on what I'm doing at the time. And I think it's easy because I've been playing basketball literally since I was 4 years old. My dad had me at the gym. He had me at the gym in a stroller before I could even play. But by the time that I actually started bouncing a ball, it was probably about like 3 or 4 years old. And just having so much experience in these past few years, even just playing the sport, it's made it so fun for me, and it's made it something that I'll definitely cherish for the rest of my life. I'm so grateful that I was able to play SIU. I'm so grateful that I was able to play a Division I sport in general, and I don't take it lightly at all. I'm so very grateful for SIU. I know I said that in one of my senior videos. Like, I love SIU. I'm forever a dog. So.
Love it. And kind of lastly, to kind of put a bow on it, you know, if you were to go back and talk to freshman Tierney or leave advice, as I'm sure you have in your senior videos, to some of your younger teammates about how to get the most out of your SIU experience, not necessarily just in athletics, but as a whole, what advice would you give them? Definitely to get involved. As Coach Bond said, because I was able to, listen in a little bit, there was times where I needed to step away from basketball as the sport. And I think athletes need to realize, especially in college, we are more than our sport.
And we are still students. We're still growing. You're 17 or 18 years old when you come to college. And you have to think like, you've already been playing basketball for so much of your life. You have to be able to live a little bit. You need to step out, explore different things. I've been able to join different organizations and get myself out with the community, be able to help in different aspects with the community, different churches, just making sure that I take the step outside of basketball so that people know that I'm more than a basketball player. I always will be, and I always have been more than a basketball player. And I think that was my biggest takeaway, is to definitely get involved in the things outside of just athletics, because there's so much more. There's so much in this world, and at the end of the day, even if you were to go professional, it's going to come to an end at some point. So just knowing that you have different opportunities to step outside of just basketball, and the opportunities are endless, especially if you really put your mind to it. And then, of course, have fun. Have fun. The 4 years go by so fast. I know everyone says that. My freshman year, I'm like, no. And then by the end of my freshman year, I'm like, I'm tired of workouts. I'm tired of summer workouts. No, it really, really does go by so fast. So I think that the biggest thing is to have fun and actually enjoy it and take in every single thing that you can. Try to just be a sponge and learning things. And of course, building relationships with people. That's also very important, to be able to reach out to your community, be able to talk to your professors, be able to talk to the people on campus in general, and be able to build those relationships so that you'll have people once you end up graduating.
All that sounds so simple, but it's all so true. And Tierney, we appreciate your time, appreciate your perspective, and congrats on everything you've accomplished. It's been a lot of fun following along, and of course we got some ball games left, so best of luck.
For sure. Thank you so much, Larry.
Thanks, Tierney. Well, we'll have more Inside Saluki Athletics presented by Pagliai of Carbondale next.
I can't get this guy to stop smiling since he's coming to my office here on Inside Saluki Athletics, presented by Pagliai of Carbondale. It was a 4-0 weekend for the Dogs and head coach Lance Rhodes. Against good competition against Bowling Green and Southern Indiana, 2 games against each of them, able to take both of those games. Coach Rhodes, congratulations on the weekend, especially due at home. You had good weather. There's not much to be upset about this past weekend for Saluki baseball, is there?
No, it was cool, and especially even going back to Tuesday. From Tuesday through the weekend, the 5 games, we had contributions from so many different players, and that's a really nice thing to see. Guys stepping up and getting big hits, 2-out hits, guys on the mound stepping up, guys who towed the rubber for the very first time. Everybody had really good, bright moments, and something to build off of for sure. But it was nice because, starting with the road trip to Arkansas State, kind of coming back from Tennessee Tech, going right back on the road, and then coming back home knowing that we were going to play, a team who's probably going to have a chance to win their league at the MAC and Bowling Green, and Southern Indiana was playing really good baseball coming into the weekend. They felt really good, and I'm just super proud of our guys the way they competed this weekend.
And to get those contributions from so many different people, it's hard to pinpoint just 1 or 2 guys from the weekend, because that makes you feel great. But the other side, for me, Coach Rhodes, it shows that it's a really good weekend, is when you win games in different ways. It's not just one recipe that you won all 4 games. You won all 4 games in different fashions. That has to be a really big pick-me-up for your guys as well.
Yeah, I thought we did a combination of things really well. I mean, we played, all the innings. We pitched extremely well from, pretty much the entirety of the weekend. And, we had some home runs mixed in there.
Yeah.
We had some stolen bases mixed in there. One thing that I still think we need to shore up is we had just routine blunders on the defensive side where it's like, if it was a rangy play or, a difficult chopper or something like that, and, you can kind of live with that. But we had some just routine ground balls that I thought, for sure outs that we need to be able to clean up. And if we do those, then, you know, maybe the spread of those scores are even a little bit wider than what they were. But, you know, again, we've got some guys that are getting, you know, used to being out there. You know, Sharks getting used to the other side of the field and things like that. So hopefully as we continue to settle in defensively, a lot of that will clean itself up.
How much of that for a guy like Shark? I know in the game for Jordan Husky on Friday, there were really some tough plays that he had to make there at third that, you know, eventually with more reps and as this season goes along, Shark's going to be extremely reliable for you there at the hot corner.
Yeah, I mean, he shows that he can handle that position for sure. It's a big transition to go from one side of the field to the other. I mean, it just looks totally different. You got the right-handed hook, and it's, you know, not that you're ever at first base and not like fully locked in, but like at third base, you can never take a ball off. You're either going to be involved in a swing, a bunt, you know, a stolen base. Like there's something going on constantly, and it's just something that he's getting adjusted to for sure. And, you know, for the most part, he's been pretty solid over there.
Look, a guy that we talked about last week, he said, man, I know sooner or later hits are going to fall for him. It was Michael Pagliai, right? He's hitting the ball so well, just unfortunately it's been right at defenders. It was really good to see him have a weekend where, man, he was tearing that baseball up and got rewarded. As we said, Coach Rhodes, those things eventually are going to pay off for you. Yeah,
I mean, him and Bach have done a tremendous job at the top of the order, just kind of setting the table and having a lot of traffic for our guys. And, you know, that's the goal. The more traffic that we can get on the bases, the more attention that our pitchers are going to, you know, focus on that and not the hitter, and we're going to get better pitches to hit. And those two have just done a tremendous job kind of setting the tone for our offense there at the top.
How do you sense in terms of when you look at your pitching staff, when you meet with Coach Tribby, in terms of roles starting to get defined, where are you at in that process right now through a couple weekends?
Yeah, I mean, 3 weeks into it, we've kind of had a plan, you know, from the opening weekend of how we're going to stack guys together. And at this point, it's kind of played out the way that we have hoped. And it won't always be that way. We won't ever be able to, you know, always go into a game and say, hey, we're going to script it out like this, and it just works perfect. But you know, the way that they've been throwing so far, they've all been throwing well. So it's kind of, you know, everybody's fell into what we had hoped that they would come into. And, you know, the biggest thing is now guys, when they show up to the park on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the way they've seen it played out, guys are understanding at this point in the game, I need to start loosening my body up. I need to start getting mentally prepared. You know, it's about my time for my name to get called. And, you know, guys are kind of, you know, falling into the role and expectations on when they potentially would go in, which obviously helps them prepare and be ready, you know, when their name is called.
One guy that was one of the more consistent names, of course, we've talked so much about Alec Niggett already this year, another phenomenal start for him, but another individual that through the player interviews I was doing that got brought up in terms of me and really been impressed with his arm has been Tanner Gertis. This weekend looked like a really good weekend for him. Do you see that he could be a potential closer, somebody on the back end of this pitching rotation, this pitching staff that you guys can really rely on?
Yeah, Gertie's kind of in a unique spot where if we have a chance to close out a game with him, we definitely could. He's got electric stuff. He's got a mid-90s fastball with a really wipeout slider. So we've kind of used him in a swing role where if we need to get out of an inning with a strikeout where there's guys on second, third, we can't give an opportunity for him to put a ball in play, to use him to shut down the game at that moment. And it might be in the sixth, it might be in the seventh, because you never really know when you need to close out the game. It might not always be in the ninth inning. So we've just used him in that situation where when we really need a strikeout or a couple strikeouts to get us out of some traffic on the bases, then we try to bring him in that moment and just really get some, punch outs right there.
There are so many situations where you try to, you anticipate, and maybe anticipate's not the right word, but when you go through fall ball, when you're going through all these inter squads, there will be situational things that you put your team in. But as you know, Coach Rhodes, once you finally get to the spring, those situations in actual games feel much different than the situations in practices and inter squads. Kind of alluding to your first Bowling Green game where they put pressure on you with chances, I believe, in the top of the eighth inning to potentially tie the game or take the lead, yet your team gets put in a situation where you got to find a way to get out of it defensively and pitching-wise, and your group did.
Yeah, I think it just goes back to, you got to have the players on the field that have a steady heartbeat. I use that term a lot, but you get caught up in the emotion of it. And you get those high-strung guys out there. The performance is up and down, and when I walked out to the mound in the 8th inning and Gavin was on the mound, there was no panic. It was 1st and 3rd. They had a chance to tie the game up with the runner there on 3rd. And the message to the guys then was just, hey, you get a sac fly, you get an out, you get a ground ball. Even if they tie it up, we've got, 6 outs to work with. We're in a good spot. And, there was no panic on Gavin's part. He gets a little roll over to Lofton there at first. And as simple as it might look, it's still a nice play to be able to catch, throw a ball to the plate, and make that tag there to kind of keep that tying run off of home plate. So, good players need to step up in big moments, and that's what they did.
There's so much more baseball yet to go, Coach Rhodes, and looking at RPI and all those things in early March is always one of those things where it's great to look at. It's a tool. You can kind of see where some teams are positioning themselves early on, but it doesn't really start to take really good fruition and probably a legit metric you want to look at till maybe later in the month of March, and then once you start getting deeper into April. I know that your RPI slid down to number 3. We're number 1 in the country at the end of the weekend, but I still believe that is a good sense to know. You look early on in your schedule. We were kind of talking about beforehand. UT Rio Grande Valley had a really good weekend. Went out and swept Lamar, a team that's going to be a favorite in their league in the Southland. You obviously look throughout. So far, your schedule, Tennessee Tech had a good weekend against a Missouri Valley team in UIC. Your early season schedule right now, I know you're really high on Bowling Green. Think they're eventually going to really show in terms of the MAC as the year goes along. The metrics right now show that you've played a good schedule to this point. Hopefully those metrics continue to show as you go throughout the year.
Yeah, I think our schedule going into the season, and we talked about this a couple times, I thought was really good because everybody, out of the 5 non-conference teams that we play, 4 of those teams received votes from coaches in their league that thought they could potentially win their conference. So I thought it was going to be a really strong schedule going into the season. It was just more of a mid-major schedule, so it just didn't maybe have the wow factor, but I knew it was going to be really good competition. So it doesn't surprise me that the RPI is high. Did I expect it to be number 1 in the country? I probably didn't expect it to be that high.
Yeah.
And I've kind of looked at that a couple different ways. One, does it mean anything in the end game right now? Maybe, but maybe not. But I do think, too, that it's, when you talk about us trying to provide experience and memories and, things that our guys will never forget. I don't think they'll ever forget that we were number 1 RPI in the country. Now, is it the first poll that comes out? Sure. But I still think it's something that, we shouldn't just kind of brush off and be like, it doesn't really mean anything right now, because it is something that's our guys should be proud of. And, we might not ever be the number 1 RPI team in the country ever again. So I do think that there's something to be said, and, our guys should be proud about it, and I think it's a really cool thing.
And as you know, got to eventually, when you start putting in your work and you get results, your team is winning right now, which that no question plays a big part in it. That's what makes it feel better, is when you see your RPI so high, it's because you're winning those games. But work you do now, Coach Rhodes, can no doubt help you and show up later in the season, even though, like I said, March 4th, maybe there's not a whole lot of stock right now, but you know what? That work that you've done to this point could end up really benefiting you once that calendar turns to April, and then once, of course, we get to the important month of May when you get the conference tournaments. You can't underestimate it. These games and what you're doing right now is still very important in the grand scheme of things.
Oh, yeah. And, the thing about it is you're trying to keep that thing as low as you can.
Yeah.
Because once you get to a certain part of the season, your RPI doesn't fluctuate as much. And so when you talk about where our starting point is at, it's as good as we could have asked. Because we're just trying to get ourselves in a position in the middle part of the year, whenever we do lose a game, that it doesn't, fluctuate 30, 40 points. And all of a sudden you go from a position of at-large to out of the at-large, position. So, biggest thing is we just got to keep winning games. You win, and the RPI stays up. So, our goal is to win every game we play anyway. So but it is nice that we thought the schedule was going to be good, and it's showing that the schedule was good.
How do you balance with your team, the program, you guys always have high expectations. So it's not like, when I'm talking about getting to an NCAA regional, that's the goal. I mean, you guys talk about that constantly. But in terms of the RPI, the metrics, and all these things, do you ever have conversations with your team about the importance of that as you go throughout the year? Or have you always just kind of been like, look, we're just focusing on the game. We're going to let that kind of the outside noise. And guys like me, when I'll notice it and alert and ask questions, that's when it'll get brought up. Or how have you kind of managed that, Coach Rhodes?
Yeah, I don't think it's something you can dodge because it is a very important metrics that the committee. I mean, it's one of the most important metrics whenever the selection committee is picking teams. So I think where it becomes super important to relay that message to your guys is, when you are playing that midweek game, especially a midweek home game or, like this weekend, we got a home weekend. Anytime you play at home, it's super important to win because those losses really hurt a lot more than a road loss or a road win helps you. So I think it's just important to remind the guys, like, hey, there's a lot of importance on this game. Not that they don't understand that because, a win and loss is super important, but it's the wins and losses way different when you're playing at home. So I think you just got to constantly remind your guys, hey, look, we can't take this game for granted because if we happen to slip up and lose one here, it can really hurt us from an RPI standpoint.
Let's look towards this weekend with Bellarmine. They've got one win to this point, but they played a really difficult schedule. They played a nationally ranked Troy team to start off the year, went on the road, played a good Charleston Southern team who's off to a great start. What do you see in them coming in for a weekend series? You saw them in a midweek game last year.
Yeah, I think we definitely can't look at the record and evaluate the team that we're playing because if you look at the box scores, they're scoring a ton of runs. Like you said, they played Troy to open up the season, and they've been on the road playing a difficult schedule. And their offense is putting up 6, 7, 10. I think they scored almost double-digit runs every game this past weekend. So their offense is scoring a lot of runs. So we're going to have to figure out a way to eliminate some of those runs that they're, putting up on the board. And we just got to continue, hopefully, playing as well as we have been. And I still think that, our bats haven't still swung like I know we can. And I know, you look at some of our scores, and just from the outside, if you just peek at it, you're like, oh, they swung the bats well. And, I still think there's more. I still think there's more consistency from, top to bottom that we're going to hopefully get to. And that's what's exciting for us as coaches is like, man, if we really start clicking on the offensive side, like what can we be? And, hopefully we'll, start showing that this weekend.
There's a reason you feel that way, though. What's the reason you feel that way?
Well, I mean, I've just seen, in practice, the inner squads, like I've seen our offense when it was clicking from top to bottom. And, our pitchers who I think are really good that are throwing the ball well against other competition right now, I've seen how they performed against those guys and made it difficult on them. So I know that it's there. The difficult thing is right now is that we've got guys in the lineup who have, struggled for the first time in their career, and that's a little bit difficult thing to kind of work your way out of. And those guys are going to figure that out, and we're going to continue as coaches to work, hand in hand with those guys in order for them to kind of get out of this little funk that some of them are in. And once we get rolling as an offense, I think it'll be pretty exciting, and it'll kind of open things up where we can do some more stuff. Right now, we've had difficult, really, stealing bases and doing some, smaller stuff because we just haven't had enough traffic.
Yeah.
Where, a lot of times we're doing stuff, whether it's 2 outs, whether it's really late in the game. And, once we can, get some stuff going early part of the game, we can open up our offense a little bit.
I think probably just have Gabe and John hit back-to-back a lot in the lineup, right?
Yeah. If they're going to continue going back-to-back, I just have to make sure I put them, back together, for the rest of the year. But that was pretty cool. I don't know if I've ever seen back-to-back 2 games in a row. And, yeah, they were back-to-back again for the 3rd game. That's what everybody in our dugout was talking about. Man, are they going to do it for 3 games in a row? But, yeah, that was pretty cool.
No question. And for John, I know maybe – I don't know if it would be correct for me to say it, the early part of the season was a struggle for him. But since you've put him in some pinch hit situations – that's a young man that no doubt has thrived for you.
Yeah, I mean, we think he's a guy that could potentially play every day for us. I mean, we've seen the bat, we've seen how damage he can do on the offensive side, and again, I think he kind of falls into that category of guys that we like see that it's going to happen. It's nice that it started to happen for him this last weekend, and hopefully another guy or two kind of piggybacks off that this coming weekend, and we just add a couple more guys to the mix that are starting to feel a little bit better about themselves, and just get that lineup as deep as we possibly can.
All the games this weekend will be on the Varsity Network app, streaming audio starting on Friday for Bellarmine. Coach, appreciate the time. We'll see you this weekend.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Well, it was great to see Saluki Nation back out at Charlotte West Stadium this past weekend, and even better to see the Dogs have a strong weekend at home. Only one loss this past weekend and 4 wins for head coach Shin Sewell and her club. Coach, congratulations on a really good weekend. I'm sure just like Coach Rhodes, we had him on the show. Feels good to get back at home just in general, but even better when you're able to get good results in front of the home fans.
Yeah, I could tell we just were excited to come home, and I was interested for the public, for the fans to meet this team. I think they've been used to we've been pretty steady Eddie for the last couple of years with the same roster. So I heard people mumbling like, I don't even know who they are and what numbers, and, making sure we had the right kids. And I'm still looking at the lineup card like, what number are you wearing? So it was a great introduction to the fans, and as per usual, they brought us home with a big crowd. So
is there a little bit more, I hate to use this phrasing, but is there more satisfaction, like I was talking with Coach Rhodes, of when you have a weekend like you do? Yeah, I mean, when you win 4 of your 5 games, that alone is going to mean a lot of positive conversation. But you won your 4 games in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know that the one loss is probably the one you and the team focus on in terms of frustration that keep you away from a perfect weekend. But the fact that in your wins, there were so many grind-out wins and different ways you were able to win games this weekend.
Yeah, and it's nice to have been having those discussions and then finally see it get on the other side of it. I think we had been down in games in early, and we weren't climbing back in a way that was positive. We were kind of frustrated, and I thought we relaxed a little bit, even down in both the Purdue games, and just sort of crawled back in one run at a time. We didn't try to do too much. And then the Central Arkansas games, they're always very scrappy, so we had to score with them, I thought. And then PFW just felt good to sort of let it all rip finally there at the end of the weekend. So I think it was some feelings that we've trying to get on the other side of with our games. Like we have been up, we have been down, and we can still, like you said, win in a lot of ways.
Biggest positive. What was the biggest positive from the weekend? Outside of just, of course, getting positive results.
Yeah, I think the biggest positive was just the way we were able to use the entire roster throughout all 5 games and really get players in and out of the lineup. I think we're starting to figure out even little things like it's not even a team of like starters, closers, stuff like that. Sometimes players need to get subbed in defensively, or they're better fits. They need to come in and pinch hit. They need to come in and DH. So I think we're starting to figure that out. Who's a matchup in terms of rolling a ground ball, getting a pop fly, things like that. So I think I really enjoyed like understanding and talking with players like here's where you really fit and why we made that change. Not necessarily because, a lot of players think, oh, I struck out looking or I didn't have a good at bat and that's why I'm getting flipped. No, she's a better fit. She's going into the outfield, or she's going to make a change at third base, or we're going to make a change on the mound because we're going a third time through.
What do you believe Coach Sewell has been? There's been a lot of adversity for your team here early on in the season. Where's your team benefited from that maybe you saw start to reap its benefits a little bit this past weekend?
Yeah, I would say definitely everybody would probably think physically, but definitely emotionally. I can't tell you how many players were in our offices doing film before this weekend and said, we don't feel the weight of the schedule or the losses. You know, we feel like a team that is still going to win a lot of games, and that's what you want to hear. You don't want to hear that the emotion of loss is starting to really pile on and be sleepless for them. And I think you saw that sort of like swing this weekend. Like, we're still very much expecting to win games. And, you know, we've talked pretty openly about them with them, like, we're going to get on the other side of this. And that's what we have to learn with this team, how this team wants to win games and play and what's best for this roster. So.
You look, of course, at your pitching staff. I know Mackenzie Newcomb was going to be a really big piece of this thing. And what did you see from her this weekend?
Yeah, I think she just is getting more and more consistent and more comfortable. Just using her in a couple of different ways, but mostly now starting.
Yeah.
You can tell her pitch count's starting to get up. She threw 155 pitches in that Purdue, which is a ton. And I said, how many pitches do you think you threw? And she was like, oh, like 80. I was like, times 2. And I looked down, and even Lauren looked down. I was like, wow, there's 155 pitches. Like, that's an incredible, and could have kept going, and woke up the next day feeling really good and won again. And there was a time at one point where she had faced Purdue 9 or 10 times through the lineup and still had good stuff. And that's probably a credit to Lauren, just getting her ready. And we stuck with the plan with her, and that was to not run her pitch count up in February and really start to push on her through March. And I think she's benefiting from that. So she needs to be able to go on a Friday and go on a Sunday. And I think she's seeing that now.
Of course, we talk about the veteran. What about Emma Gibson? I know she's yet
Yeah.
to have an official win in her column, but are you seeing good things in her innings?
Just absolute buy-in. You know, I think we brought her here to consider her as a two-way player, and for this year she's been pitching mostly for us and has totally bought into sort of that 1 to 1.5 times through. She's really like a 9 to 12 out kid. And what she does is usually goes out and starts the game off right. Comes out of the bullpen ready to go mentality-wise, pitches are working, gets us off to a good start, rolls some ground balls, pops a few people up, works fast, which our offense likes. So I'm just super appreciative of the work that she does. She's in Lauren's office daily, and really puts everything into her. We talk a lot about generically about roles, but you know, roles this and roles that. But that player, she is all in on what she can do, and that's get us off to a great start.
It's weird where we were talking about before we got on, Coach Sewell, that, you know, defensive numbers a little bit are down across the board.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's been a part of your team that has maybe been an internal frustration, but did you see your group take strides this weekend? I'm sure part of that just helps when you're on a familiar field, a field you've been on a lot, but are you seeing the defense improve?
Yeah, I think we're understanding how to sort of play behind this new staff too. I think people forget we changed everything out except for the 2 middles and the center fielder and the catcher. So everybody is new. Everybody's trying to figure it out. But I thought on the corners and then the outfield play we did a lot better in terms of just reading balls and ball flight and being okay with if somebody did scuff one, it's not in, just don't throw it around, leave her at first base, strand her, get on to the next out. I thought in the first couple weekends we were away and sort of like scrambling, throwing the ball around. There's times to go after runners at home, and there's times to stuff it and keep it as a single. So
You were just describing of how much you lost and how, look, it's everybody's trying to figure it out in your role. Where does that challenge come in, Coach Sewell, of kind of balancing the knowing, look, there's a lot to replace here, but there's also that internal fire competitive side as the coach. Yeah. My expectation level is still high here. How difficult has that been for you to start this year?
Well, I think there's players, every roster is going to look at the coaching staff at some point and be like, are you going to bend on those standards? Like, are you okay because it's not going well? Like, are you going to buy into my, like, sort of woe is me-ism, you know, like, and I think that weekend happened last weekend, and we just came back with the same message, like, here's what it is on offense, defense, pitching. Like, we're sticking here. And I think also, too, we had so many chess pieces on the chessboard that we were trying to figure out all the different ways. And if you probably look at our box scores, you can tell. I mean, I pinch ran a pitcher in the Purdue ITB win. So that was Kiana McDowell on second base. And everybody looked at me like, I'm like, no, guys, we're out of runners. Like, Kiana's going to second base. So it became a big running joke after that. But we were. I mean, we had used everybody. And I think that's where sometimes we have to figure out, we don't want to narrow down the pieces too soon, but we need to get everybody some work and some time. And I know in one of the games I changed out Kiana for KT, and that's just because I need some film on KT. It's not because Key was doing anything wrong. I just need to get that kid back up and pitching on the mound after a little minor, she had just a really minor finger issue that she was dealing with last weekend. And it was nothing that Key had done. I just needed to see KT, and we've got everybody, working into the game.
Last non-conference weekend before you get into league play. I mean, I hate to speak in cliches, but it always seems like it does go by fast, your non-conference portion of the schedule. But in terms of with your team and how you manage it, of getting them to really understand that as well, Coach Sewell, that this is an important weekend. You got some great opportunities, but after this weekend, it's time to compete for a championship, which I know you guys, of course, have extremely high standards for that once you get into the Valley.
Yeah, and I think we use this weekend as sort of a reset, right? Let's reset, come home and do our thing. And I don't think this team is going to feel the calendar as much of the MVC sort of looming. Yeah. I think that's what's really cool about them is they're a pretty low heart rate team. I told them the other day, I was like, I don't think you guys are going to risk a stroke or a heart attack. Like, you're pretty, that's
leave that to the coaches.
Leave that to the coaches, yeah. And I also think that our staff is fairly low heart rate too. Like, I think that's one thing we've been really good at with this team is just not laying low. I mean, there's times we've gotten frustrated if we've done something 2 or 3 times over and over again, but I really enjoyed this team in terms of like just going to work. But I think too, we start to talk about, okay, that one game at a time, but that one game at a time is going to become Illinois State opener at some point with the Valley. So getting all of the things that prepared and using these games, not just for wins and losses, but for work.
And, of course, starting off with a rival in league play, too. But that's next weekend. So this weekend, Wisconsin and Northern Illinois, the strengths of both these teams.
Yeah, I think Wisconsin, a coach that had been in the Valley, been with Loyola for a few years, and then went on to Wisconsin. Very well coached, well balanced. They're really pitching the ball well, so I want to dive into some of that. Have played a pretty decent schedule early on and have picked up some good wins. I'm sure this will be better weather for them getting down here, but they've been on the road a long time. Definitely want to come at it just like their Purdue situation, try to pick up some Power 4 wins. NIU has a new staff, and they're playing very well. And it's one of those things where when she was hired, there was no staff and not a lot of players, so has done a great job sort of regrouping that squad. And I know they're moving conferences, so they've got a lot going on with their move to the Horizon and things like that. So,
does it help at all when there are a little bit of common opponents? I know Wisconsin played Kansas, so does that help in terms at all from a scouting perspective for your group?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, all of us, have the same film probably now. We joke like, let's just all get in the same room and give it all up, and whoever wins wins. But we're pretty much paying for the same information at this point. It's just who can do what with it and execute it. But I do think, it's pretty cool for us to host back-to-back Big Tens.
No doubt.
And I think that's what we, especially in the recruiting aspect of the program, and I always appreciate when coaches come here, and there's been a lot of talk about Power 4s coming to the high mid-majors in the wake of what the NCAA has, decided and legislated and things like that. So we always appreciate it when a team like that says, hey, we're still willing to come in, and I think we're great hosts. We did our game ops people were on it this weekend, so got a lot of compliments and had a great environment.
Well, and get a chance to do it again this weekend. Again, the game starts Saturday against Wisconsin first, and then Northern Illinois second. Doubleheaders, back-to-back days. It'll be a fun weekend for the Saluki Invitational. Mike Trude will be on the call all weekend with the Varsity Network action. Coach Schultz, appreciate the time. Looking forward to this weekend.
Thanks, Luke.
Perfect.
This has been Inside Saluki Athletics, presented by Pagliai of Carbondale. The preceding has been a Learfield presentation on the Saluki Sports Network.